When I had my kids, I really grew up, and I just wanted to talk about that you really gain a sense of responsibility, and you really get a sense of just how fragile things are, and how quickly things can change when you got a little one. And everybody that has had a baby or taking care of a little one, whether it's a little cat or a dog, or whatever, you realize just how quickly things can change, and you become very sensitive to the fact that there is risk in this world, right? And I think that's sort of the marker for me, is when you have kids, where you dramatically change and how you view the world, and just how you just grow up in the sense that you just appreciate things a lot more. And I know it's really tough when you have those little ones, but you always go through, almost always, you have sort of a scare, right? I don't know of any parent that hasn't had some sort of scare of some sort, where they, you got to rush them to the hospital and do something. Whether they spike a fever, or they fall down, or whatever, there's always something, and you realize just how crazy tippy this world is. I talk about that, right, all the time. That's kind of what risk is, right? We have this sort of notion that risk is sort of this continuous function, right? That's what we would sort of think about or talk about, is that it's kind of like this continuous function of sort of, as time progresses, this is kind of what the probability function would look like. As time progresses, you have an increased risk of something happening, right? And it's sort of very continuous, but it's not really that way for most of us, and how it sort of works. It's really pretty tippy, in the sense that things just change very quickly. It's kind of more like a dichotomous, or a discrete sort of function, where everything's totally fine and everything is kind of going along, and then all of a sudden things just change very dramatically, and you gotta really worry about things, and so you get a sense of you appreciate how just how precious this world is, and how fortunate and lucky we are, and until that point you really don't get it. When you can have all sorts of different experiences, and unless you start taking care of somebody or something on a regular basis, and you sort of see the ups and downs, you really don't, you don't have a good sense of what's going on, and you don't have a good, your risk meter, I guess, is kind of out of whack. And once that happens, you grow up, and you're growing up just basically means that, in my perspective, you have a good appreciation of just how sensitive things are, and your risk meter gets very, honed with it, right? You're very clearly aware that some things are dangerous, and some things are not good, in the sense that they can cause problems in the future. Unless you go through that, unless you have it, you just don't quite know, and you don't quite get it. Some of you might be born naturally sort of sensitive to risk, but I think most of us aren't. Most of us kind of have to learn that skill, and learn what it means that things can change very quickly, and you be cautious with it, unless you've lived through things. That's why people, experience is a really good teacher when it comes to risk, in the sense that it sort of makes you very cautious with it, and it makes you sort of very sensitive to just how quickly things change. right? There's lots of research that sort of looks at the relationship between experience and risk, in how we sort of make sense of the world. It's actually a real big part of decision-making theory. And, in general, unless we don't have those experiences, or unless we have those experiences, that sort of, something bad can happen, our risk meter is just out to whack for the most part, really bad at judging risk. But the problem is you don't know that something is risky often until it actually happens to you, right? We don't have a good sense of that and what that looks like. And so you can read all sorts of numbers, you don't get a good appreciation for it. So, long story short, get a good sense of that risk meter. I know that you're probably listening to this, you don't really understand until you actually care for somebody, and a bunch of things happen to you, and just always know. So I always err with the fact that I don't judge risk very well. The human beings just do not judge risk very well, and I always default to being a little more risk averse because of that, because we just don't have a good sense of it. So that is a good error, because if you're sort of more risk, if you sort of are more doing things that exert more risk, right, that are more risky, you possibly can run into problems if you don't judge how risky something actually is. But if you err on the more cautious side, then your judgments, even if they're wrong, then you're fine, right? So just think about that as you're going throughout the day. Think about how appreciate the world, and then also be well aware that our understanding and how we judge risk is really bad. It is not as good as one would think it is. So, some food for thought. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.